This is Secrets to Win Big, your roadmap to sustained growth. Brought to you by Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, brand whisperer, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. Find him at zenmango.com. And now, here's your host, Arjun Sen.
Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. This is Arjun welcoming you to this edition of Secrets to Win Big. I love to win, but I've always found if you get into a position to win big, it helps you sustain the win over and over again, and successive wins become so much easier. And in this podcast, it's truly a pleasure to bring to you conversations with leaders from all walks of life, from all over the world. And the reason it is very important to me is I've realized that each one of us are different. Our leadership goals are different, paths are different, and that's the reason this incredible conversation and nuggets are really priceless to me, and I enjoy sharing them with you. In that spirit today, my VIP guest is Subrata Dutta. Subrata is the president of Asia Pacific and Middle East, Samsonite Asia LTD, part of the $3.5 billion company in the business of travel and lifestyle products. His past accomplishments are he's a high impact leader in global and Indian consumer product business with over 30 years experience in India, Asia, and Russia. A turnaround expert with track record of turning around several diverse businesses and effecting multiple fold growth in stagnant businesses. And as you start looking at is, before I share more, you'll start seeing there's a pattern of big impact in big mega brands at a global level, sometimes building on the momentum or sometimes turning around a stagnant business. And that makes Subrata's experience quite fascinating. There are a couple of more things to look at. Is Subrata before that held the CEO's role for Fab India Overseas Private Limited, the company growing worldwide in the business of apparels, home furnishings, furniture, personal care, and health foods. And the key thing to look at is as he has taken over the growth of this brand, this is a very strong brand in India as a leader, and how he took the brand beyond. That would be very important for us to know. Finally, he's a high impact leader of Himalaya Herbal Healthcare, Pepsi Foods Limited, Lakme Limited, and other organizations. Subrata Dutta, it's truly a pleasure, my friend, to invite you and have you here at Secrets to Win Big.
Hey, thank you, Arjun, for having me here. It was actually embarrassing going through the entire spiel you gave about my biodata. I'm surely not a VIP, and I'm really privileged to be here at the Arjun Sen Secrets to Win Big.
Thank you. So Subrata, first of all, the moment any one of us talk about luggage right now, some of us may even think, what is luggage? Because from a layman's point of view, Samsonite products are connected to international and national travel business, and that has been so hard hit by COVID. Like, I can't believe, when was the last time my luggage and myself even saw each other? Maybe at some point we need to go into some therapy. So how are you keeping the brand vibrant during these current times and get ready to come out stronger than before in a new normal?
Now, surely these are tough times for anyone in the business which has anything remotely got to do something with travel. And definitely our business has been hit to begin with. But there are 3-4 aspects here. One is that we are not just about travel, we are about travel and lifestyle. So half our business is about travel goods, and the other half is about products which you need on a day-to-day basis for going to office, for going out on a leisure trip, for going out hiking. And therefore that part of the business is not so badly impacted. It's doing quite well, actually. We've got a diverse range of brands, starting with Samsonite, Tumi, American Tourister, Gregory, Lipo, Hartman. So depending on the circumstances, different brands do differently. And we are, of course, a very global organization. So as you know, coronavirus has been hitting the world, but there are some countries which are more impacted and some which are less. So the job right now is to make the most of what we have. And I think we are doing that. We've been cost rationalizing a lot. We are making the company prepared for what they call the cliche term, the new normal. I would call the future. And yeah, life is not so bad, but it's been very tough.
So
In
I love
fact,
your,
this part of the world, Arjun, in Asia, you may have heard this. There's a saying that challenge and opportunity are kind of the two sides of the same coin. In fact, if I remember correctly, one friend had told me that when you write it in a certain script, they look almost similar. So we believe that this challenge is actually going to be an opportunity for us. It will make our company much more resilient. Uh, I'm not hoping bad for anyone, but at the same time, we are a very strong player. Weaker players may not have as good a luck as we have. So we may end up with a larger share of a smaller market. And we are actually not unduly worried about the future. And if I stretch it a little further, as I remember, Arjun, you are an aeronautical engineer, aren't you?
yes, sir.
And as an aeronautical engineer, you'll remember that we talk about headwinds.
Mhm.
And an aircraft takes off only when there's a headwind.
Mhm.
So I look at this coronavirus somewhat like a headwind where it helps us to fly.
I love that. And I'm really glad you brought reference to my aeronautical engineering. And I'm asked this question over and over again, what is an aeronautical engineering doing in the branding field? And I just remind everybody that every aircraft, every day doesn't have to take off. But if you take off, landing safely is non-negotiable. And that's the part where I take pride by saying that any brand message, you don't have to have a brand message, but if you have a brand message, that's what aeronautical taught me is you must land on the heart of every customer every time for a feeling. But again, thanks for drawing reference to my aerospace engineering, and I just had to bring some justification explanations out. So Subrata, let's talk a little bit about Samsonite a little more. Okay, with all the multiple brands you talked about, when you joined, Samsonite was already a very established brand. Okay. So what was your strategy to take an established brand forward? We'll talk about turnover situations, turnarounds a little later, but how do you take a brand that was already had momentum? How do you build it, take it forward?
Like I told you, one has to understand what one has. And like I mentioned to you, Samsonite has always been privileged to be a multi-brand company.
Mhm.
So when you have a multitude of brands and you fit them to a country.
Mhm.
So for example, Samsonite has always been very strong in United States of America as over the last many years. It has been the go-to brand for anyone wanting to travel with a product.
Mhm.
But when we launched in India, in Asia, for example, we realized that India was not ready for Samsonite really. The price point of Samsonite being what it is and the kind of offering that Samsonite had, it wasn't fitting. So we had another brand in our portfolio called American Tourister, a very
Mhm.
strong brand, which we had acquired some time back. So we said that the India strategy will be led by American Tourister.
Mhm.
And that really worked because we got an American Tourister as the key brand in India and communicated it very well, very strongly. And the moment we started doing that, we found that we had actually been able to position American Tourister, which we called the tough international luggage. And that was a very strong proposition in the Indian environment when, as an Indian, one would expect a lot of toughness in the bag. It's not just about style. And in a way, we know that's the reality that Indians do get enamored a little when there's something international.
Mhm.
And they also value something which is valued across the world. So this really worked for American Tourister in India at that stage, and we got success in India. If we would have tried to do it with Samsonite, maybe we would not have been so successful. Likewise, in countries like Japan, we've got a brand Gregory, which is into outdoor products. Between Gregory and Tumi in Japan, we have 70% contribution to our total business. So one has to really look at what the market construct is and accordingly what we have and fit the two. So that's what we've been doing. And of course, apart from that, there are many other points which we really took into account. The biggest one, which is a little philosophical, was that earlier we used to have a tendency of saying that if this is the large market pie, let's say 100, out of that, what is the market which is above a certain market size, certain price value, sorry. And let's say you take only $100 plus for a cabin bag as your market. And then you say you've got a market share of 60% in that. That's one way of looking at it, nothing wrong. But we said that no, anyone who has any intent to travel is our customer. So suddenly your market becomes much larger to look at. And I know, I mean, some of my friends used to at that stage say that if someone is traveling without a bag, just packing everything in a box, that's also my customer. I need to have a brand to address to that and capture the mind of that consumer and therefore the wallet of that consumer. So we started looking at the market in a much larger perspective, and that.
So to me, I think, these are a few fascinating things, Subrata. One is you talked about was an Indian market in a way I look at is the positioning was somewhat triangulated. On one side, you found a feature that is very important in India, and you communicated like India, it's not durable, it's not, guaranteed, it's very tough, that whole part that how you communicated. Then the whole name on how you brought the establishment and then brought everything together as you start building that. So I feel that that's a great example.
And then, of course, Arjun, just to interrupt, the other key part is that when you say all this, saying is one thing. And then, of course, you have to live up to the promise. And that happens over a period of time when you live up to the promise through your service warranty, through how you treat your customers, limited number of problems subsequently with the right kind of service, what you do inside your factory to ensure that the quality is right, each bag, how it is tested per batch in terms of the wheels, in terms of the handles. So there's a lot of stress which one bag out of a batch has to go through so as to really satisfy us that this is really worthy of reaching the hands of a consumer. So quality one cannot compromise.
Absolutely. And so to me, I think that's a great take on branding. To me, I think even though you talked about building a very strong brand and, love the sneak peek behind how it was established and introduced. But the success, as you're talking about, is the delivery of service and living up the promise, and love how you took it down the supply chain all the way down to how you produce and ensure through testing. So I really think that that's the whole secret to sustaining a brand promise. Now, I really think that we have talked a lot about luggage. Now let's talk about, a little cheesy, but what goes in the luggage, clothing. And that's the part where you have amazing experience in Fab India. Anybody who is not only from India, but travels to India and now also in US in some of the lead cities, Fab India has become clearly known as that defined brand where people pay nearly US, whatever the normal high dollar value for quality clothing. And that's what Fab India has achieved. So for a unique brand defined by its path, both its niche product and also its heritage and its retail outlets, what was the secret to growing the brand both nationally and then taking it outside outside India?
Let me first be honest here that Fab India was not a difficult task. Fab India, as you know, Arjun, from your experience in India, has been a very unique brand in India and subsequently abroad. It tells the story of India. It's got the right amount of heritage, it's got the right story, and it's got the right mission. And it's a company with a purpose, where the purpose is to take the craft from the artisans of India and take it out to the consumers over there and effectively celebrate India in a unique way. So as far as the message is concerned, there was nothing to be done. Just the question of taking the message out there and using some kind of an amplifier and amplifying it so that more number of people can hear it. So how do you do that? And the first step, of course, was we increased the uh, number of stores drastically. We increased the size of the stores so that the entire shopping could become much more experiential for the consumer. Uh, we started working much more on the merchandise, as we call it, the merchandise planning and the entire process of editing and curating, so that what you give to the consumer is very crisp and very to the point, and at the same time making the shopping experience easy. And we started expanding also through a fleet of business partners, which we call the franchisees. So the moment we started doing all this, we got the coverage increased almost 3-4 times. So instead of one person hearing the wonderful story of Family India, we started getting 5 or 6 people hearing the same story and experiencing it. And that really helped. And once we had done this in the first maybe 1.5 years or so, then we got into bigger communication. We got into mass communication as well. And that's when we really managed to take the story of Fab India, the goodness of Fab India, out there into the deep corners of the country. So I repeat again, Fab India, the best part was that it was a company which was having the right intent and the right purpose. And it was just about amplifying the story.
So I love
And
that.
the other part, of course, was, I must mention this here in the same breath, that Fab India had one of the most awesome workforce that I've come across. Fab India, first of all, it was, I remember this very fondly. This was one company I joined, and I jokingly said that we must correct the gender imbalance. There were 90% women folk in the company, extremely inspired, extremely sincere, and extremely committed. So there would be people that Fab India would employ after they've started working at the age of maybe 40, 45. They first taking care of their house and then now they wanted to work. And all these people were out there in a hurry to prove themselves. So it was a lot about mobilizing, channelizing this entire force and getting them to deliver what they always wanted to deliver for Fab India, which was reaching it out to everyone and doing it properly.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. You talked about, one of the things you talked about growth, and at that point of time, I think, you also talked about the shopping experience made it easy, but also as you grew, you put the franchises in. On one side, a company with such a clear heritage, story, and mission, at the same time also having such an amazing culture, which was not being faked. It was like born with it, authentic, and grew into how they took care of people. What was the secret behind finding that franchisee, and let's say all the way in Plano, Texas, or in New York, in US, or other parts of the world, who lives the brand culture and continues the experience?
It's something like a 50-50 approach. 50% lies in selecting and tying up with a franchisee who has a similar ethos. And the other 50% is over a period of time, getting the franchisee to learn about the company and therefore genuinely get convinced in what the company is trying to do. So I know, again, a very cliched Indian statement perhaps, but something like a marriage. I mean, you first get two like-minded people together, and then over a period of time, they learn about each other and get closer to each other. So there was a lot of contacts which were ensured between the company and the franchisee. And that led to the franchisee getting really committed that what he or she is doing is really making a difference. And Fab India has had a lot of success with the franchisees.
Love that. And to me, I just have to, again, I have no direct connections with Fab India. I just have to talk about a special, amazing moment was in Dallas, Texas, a family gathering, baby's first birthday occasion. And of course, we of Indian origin find every reason to celebrate. My sister-in-law, her daughter's husband, amazing human being, he just realized that all of us have amazing clothes for this evening occasion. He just didn't plan. And he is a very fit human being with long hands, like something little different. Okay. So of course we go to Fab India. And what I loved was how they literally saw the very fact three of us are there to take care of so-called the son-in-law in the family, who in Indian culture is very special. The level of pampering that he got, and he changed and tried maybe 7, 8 different things, and there was no urgency, calmness, nothing, nobody got irritated, and it just left us with such an amazing experience. And we all felt so proud. And if a retail store allowed me to tip, I would have tipped that day a lot of money because of the family pride and the moment they created. So I really appreciate the work all of you have done and had to share a particular story about the brand.
Thank you, Arjun. Every time I hear good stories about retail, be it in my own company, Samsonite or Fab India, or be it outside, I feel very proud because I think there's a lot of detailing which goes into retail. There's a lot of dedication which is there. Imagine a person who's working in that store from morning 10 o'clock till evening 8 o'clock, standing on one's feet and doing the same work day in, day out, and remaining the same inspired self every time when a consumer walks in. It's a fantastic job. So I think this is my moment of paying a tribute to all my retailer friends.
So I would not let you get away with the tribute so easy. Subrata, with your so passion and the tribute came so far, so much from your heart. If any one of us are trying to get into retail industry, what does it take, Subrata, to be a little different, to have that pride that you have in the retail industry? Like, what does it take to be so successful in the retail industry?
I think the first requirement is to want to do it, to be there to make people happy. And I know I've asked this question to many successful store managers when I go and meet them during my daily beat. And I ask them that, why do you do this job? And majority of the time, they actually say that we love to meet consumers. We love to be with them. And every moment that a consumer walks in, whether the consumer buys or does not buy, is a moment for them which they cherish, they enjoy. And the second part, of course, is real down to the brass tacks, which is someone who's willing to get into details, someone who's willing to end the day after doing all this happy work by doing the mundane stuff like stock count and money count and stuff like that. So it's a real combination of being passionate about the consumer and being detailed about every single thing in the store, be it the positioning of a mannequin in the store or be it the little bit of dust speck on the window. Everything has to catch the attention of the retailer.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. To me, with my experience in hospitality, one of the things I have found was I was working with a client and we were trying to recruit the right kind of team member. But the thing that baffled the heck out of me was they were interviewing all these future rock star team members sitting in a conference, around a conference table. Because to me, I don't know about you, my energy is totally different when I'm standing and I'm a totally different person when I'm sitting. And especially when you hire a person for a role, you want to test that person in that role. So why don't you do the interview standing? Like even, it's like, again, it could be a bad example in US, but still, if you have a cricket player, or even if I go to baseball here, the person who is the bowler or the pitcher, you don't want them to practice having him bat in that journey. So to me, as I start going through, this becomes very important to start looking at the skills, but I really appreciate you talking about the blend of the two skills. That was very important as you look at. And what I also realized from your talking was, your sharing was, that the mundane, tougher job where it needs attention to details comes at the end. It's like at the end of a meal, if my mom asks me to eat vegetables after finishing my dessert, that's the real challenge. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that.
Or it's even more than that, Arjun. It's at the end of the meal, my wife asks me to do the dishes, and I have to happily do it.
That's- So I just got a commitment from Subrata that he happily would be doing the dishes the
Absolutely.
next few years. So in every position where the situation requires a rapid turnaround or a growth, you have always achieved big wins. Okay. So let me look at is when you join any company, what's your secret to getting a team aligned? You just talked about a little bit earlier, but I just want to go back by saying let's look at you joined Samsonite or Fab India or any of the amazing organizations before. What's your secret from day one, Subrata, that you get people aligned to deliver results together?
Okay, let me think and answer this, because it's not an easy one. At the same time, it's quite easy. I think the first important secret is the first 30 days and the first 100 days are very important.
Mhm.
So I always say that the first 30 days are important, because that's when anything which is not right or anything which needs a change will strike you immediately. I mean, you just can't miss it. It will be striking you almost like you come back from outside and you find that your main door is completely open and you know that something is wrong, something has gone inside. So that's the first 30 days. You have to really look at all this, but you can't act. So you have to write it down somewhere that these are the things which strike you as odd. And from the 30 days to the 100 days is really when you need to start acting on them. Because I believe that after 100 days, I put it jokingly, but very seriously, I think after 100 days, a person becomes part of the system. So nothing strikes him or her as odd anymore. Everything becomes like, it's okay, what's wrong? So that's the importance of the first 30 days and the 100 days. 30 days is for you to notice what all seems to be amiss and keep a note of it. And from the 31st day to the 100th day, start acting on them one by one by one. Then going further into it, of course, the most important part would be to start with a positive mindset. Because if you believe it can be done, you can make people believe it can be done. And that really is easier said than done, because very often you'll yourself feel that, oh, this looks so difficult, this looks so impossible. Then how do you go and convince someone? But that's the first step. The second step is, I would say, linked to Newton's first law, which is all about every body continues to be in a state of motion or rest unless compelled to do otherwise by someone else. So everyone has this inertia, and the inertia can be both in stagnance or in motion. So there'll be some places in the company where you'll find there's a lot of inertia of rest. Nothing seems to be moving. So going there and giving that right push is very important. On the other hand, there'll be some other places where you'll find that someone is constantly doing the same thing mindlessly without thinking, day in, day out, and that process can be changed completely. And then the company can do better, that employee may become happier as well. So that is a state of motion. So you go there and get the person to stop for a while. Just say that, stop. Let's see what you're doing. And then start all over again. So that would be the second very important thing, which is just making that change, stopping that inertia. The third would be conflicts. Some people are afraid of conflicts, and some people know how to align the conflict. If I take once again an example from, today is my day of going back to engineering, I guess. But if I again take an example from Newton's second law, which says that when you apply force, all that is fine, but work gets done when you apply force and something moves. Remember this, Arjun?
Mhm.
So in life also, very often you'll find that there'll be two persons pushing the goal, but nothing is moving because they're pushing from two opposite ends.
Mhm.
Because they both believe that that's their job. They both believe that by proving the other colleague wrong, they're achieving something. At that stage, if the leader goes and tries to tell them, no, 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 look, Arjun, you're pushing from the wrong end. Instead of pushing from east to west, push from west to east and help Subrata, he may not be willing to do it because it'll take him a while to reconcile that what he was doing was not right. So alignment is all about moving them a little. If they were pushing like this, can they both push like this? And then there'll be some movement. And the moment they start not pushing exactly against each other, but a little aligned pushing, and the goal starts moving, they'll themselves be surprised and happy that, okay, something is happening. And nothing delights a professional as much as end result. And automatically we find that when that happens, they start realizing the virtue of working together, aligning together, and the results start keep kind of showing on its own. So one can't just go and tell two colleagues that, no, 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 what you're doing is entirely wrong. You have to change your way completely. So alignment is about just doing it gradually. So that part is about the conflict. On the other hand, I believe that conflicts are very important because any company where everyone is very happily agreeing with each other is not good. One has to have conflict. But it's just a question of how do you use that conflict against somewhat like the proverbial headwind that we were talking about
Mhm.
and making it work in the right direction for the company. Then, yeah, I think these are the important parts. Then
I
I
love.
would also definitely talk about being very clear about the purpose, because the company has to be very clear about what purpose it's serving, be clear about means and end, as in what is the end purpose, and be clear that, okay, the means are not something that should be celebrated as the end objective.
Mhm.
So the means also should not be such that they justify the end. Be very clear about that. And the last one, Arjun, is perhaps the most important thing I've learned in the recent past, which is all about data. Now, the world today is talking about big data, and that's what is kind of driving all of us. Very important. But at the same time, managers I've seen so often get so much of data that they get confused. Now, how do you cull out information from data in today's world when you're getting reams and reams of data coming to you? How do you make it into something which can be interpreted correctly as information and then act upon it, rather than just celebrating that I'm getting all the data in my company at my desk every day is the biggest challenge. And if all this can be done quickly, if all this can be achieved, again, going back to the 100 days thing, then one gets results in a year, two, and so on.
So I love the
So yeah, I said a
concept of
lot.
yes, I love the concept of how you talked about 30 days, 100 days. And you know, that is a great concept. And I have heard about the similar concept in very successful in politics, because anytime you come in, people just watch you and you have those. But I love the way you broke it down into first 30 to observe, write it down, and then seven, you know, that way, just like a carpenter, you measure multiple times, and then 30 to 100, that's when you're acting on it before you become. And the alignment thing also really hit home, because a mentor of mine told me that one way to maximize on conflict, what he talks about is the third point. If I want to go to one and you want to go to two, and both of us are fighting, why don't we both together push to three? And once it moves, I love that whole thing about seeing it move, where we just haven't made it move for a while. It's, you know, people love real success.
Oh
So
yeah, I
Subrata,
believe in that completely, Arjun, that inherently human beings,
mhm,
they love success.
mhm,
And when they see a little success coming, they are inspired to achieve more success.
mhm. So let's talk about, you know, you have been working globally on building global brands. Okay. So what's the common misconception about building global brands based on your experience you want to break the myth or debunk?
Arjun, here I would confess that I have not worked in real luxury end. So maybe what I'm saying will not apply to that. But I strongly believe that the biggest myth for which a global brand has to break so as to be successful globally is that the brand should not change at all, or the products should not change at all from country to country. So I firmly believe that a good brand which goes global must
Mhm.
be willing to keep the DNA intact, the core intact, but beyond that, it should be willing to change depending on the requirements and needs of a country. It
Got it.
has to adapt. And if it doesn't, then it
So what
shows up
changes?
somewhere
What
as
changes from
arrogance.
country to country? The DNA doesn't change, but what changes?
The individual, if I go into details, be willing to change the product set a little bit, be
Got it.
willing to modify the product so as to suit the needs of the country. For example, when we move from a Japan to an India, for example, uh, in Japan, if the consumer is wanting more of the small size packs, which are very compact, then give that.
Mhm.
But when you go to India, the consumer needs a bigger space to give that. If you know that in India, the consumer is going to be traveling more by train, then put that much of focus on the wheels and the durability in terms of where the wheel is going to go over.
Mm.
But in other places, when you know that it's more for air travel, then you focus much, much more on the weight and
Got it.
so on. In terms of then colors, for example, a color which may work very well in Australia
Mhm.
may not work at all in a Japan or a Korea. The shapes, like Korean, we know the backpack shapes have to be a certain uh, more rectangular and more sleek, and that may not be something which the Indian consumer may be wanting. But one has to be constantly willing to make these adaptations and changes. But what one cannot sacrifice would be that basic DNA, which would be, of course, quality, which would be, of course, the purpose of the brand. And
The core brand promise, what the brand stands for, and
yes,
how you fulfill it. Got it. So Subrata, amazing career, amazing impact. So who are, two to three people who have been most influential in your journey to get to here and beyond?
first person comes to mind would be my mother. My mother was like most mothers, the most awesome person. So she was very balanced. She had never worked on a career, but I think if she would have joined a profession, she would have been most outstanding leader in that company. She knew how to really empathize with people, and she was always wanting to learn. No, I mean, she passed away in 2010, but in those days in India, mobiles were new. She was already into SMSing and stuff. So I can well imagine if she were to be alive today, she would have been heavily into tweets and Instagram and stuff.
And zooming,
I
yeah.
learned a lot, and Zoom, of course. I learned a lot from her, and without even realizing, she taught me a lot.
Mm.
And the other person again, closer to today, I would put my daughter because uh, it's awesome how she manages to fit in so much into a day, and how she constantly gets more out of life. I mean, always knowing what she wants and always multitasking and always we keep talking about as professionals that work-life balance. I think I'm learning from her how she does her work superbly, and at the same time she ends up getting entire joy out of life every day. So yeah, I would definitely talk about these two persons.
To me, I think, talking about mothers, I think, it really touches a chord because same way, my mother is one of the most amazing organizers ever. like, no, we have a very big family on my mother's side, 5 brothers, 7 sisters. We are already, I think, 40 plus cousins, and next generation is even growing. So any wedding, my mom is the person who has project management to everything in her mind, no laptop, nothing. And the same thing is my mother-in-law. Again, I say mother-in-law just to define her, but to me, she's Amma, is the level of energy, passion, and caring for every person. I really feel that this is for all of us is inspiration. And also you talked about your daughter. I'm also very fortunate. Like inspiration is so close to home. We just have to open our eyes and see it. And thanks for reminding us what we shouldn't take for granted. You're
Yeah,
listening. Yeah.
in fact, I must mention, I mean, I've had the privilege of meeting Raka, your daughter,
Mhm.
and she's one more very awesome person that I've come across.
Thank you. Raka would appreciate that. So you are listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. Today, it's truly an honor to have this conversation with my VIP guest and my very good friend, Subrata Dutta, President, Asia Pacific and Middle East, Samsonite Asia Limited. Part of a 3.5 billion company in the business of travel and lifestyle products. But the conversation, what has really hit home thus far is Subrata's deep caring and understanding. So to me, I think some of us understand but don't care, but some of us care but don't. But getting into that lethal energy, and that's where he talked about not the goal, but the means and the path is equally important. Subrata, this last section is a rapid question with 3 to 7 word answers. Are you ready?
As you know, I can never keep something within 3 to 7 words, but I'll try.
Okay, that's good enough. You get extra couple of words. But over 10, Zoom starts doing acting little bizarre. Okay. So what would be in the DNA of any brand that wants to be a global brand?
Yeah, like I mentioned, it has to be a strong core on the purpose of the brand.
Okay. Love that. So now let's go beyond building a global brand. Let's talk about leadership because you have been an amazingly successful leader, inspiring people to success. What will be your advice to anyone in any walk of life to be a successful leader?
Be fair, be transparent with your colleagues, empower them, trust them, but have a few controls and checks have to be in place, and always tell the truth, face the truth.
Always tell and face the truth. I really think that is so important.
And if I would be allowed to add one more thing, I would say be your own judge.
What do you mean by that?
Will you give me 10
Yeah,
more words?
absolutely. Take 15, 20
So,
words.
Arjun, I mean, I remember you as a sportsman. So you remember that in cricket, a bowler gets to know even before the ball reaches the batsman that he's going to get a wicket.
Mhm.
Or in tennis, the moment an ace leaves the racket of a server, the server knows that this is going to be an ace. So I always believe that the person himself knows when he is doing something wrong or doing something fantastic, and therefore one has to constantly judge.
And that's very fascinating because to me, working with some of the top athletes, what I've realized is visualization is so important. Like I have seen athletes, they can exactly visualize a golf shot 510 feet long and it'll land between 505 to 507, take 3 bounces forward and 2 backwards to stop exactly there. And I just went crazy looking at the margin of error and how they visualize. So thank you for elaborating on that. So how do you win big? What's a big secret for you?
I think it's not about how do I win big, but I would believe that when everyone wins, company wins, consumer wins, environment, most important, wins, and when the win is sustainable, as in you know that you're winning in such a way that you'll win again tomorrow because you're not spoiling anything in your process of victory.
Mhm.
So that's really a complete win, a big win.
Love that. So 3 to 7 words on what is key turning, what
Sorry,
is
yes.
the key to turning a business around?
Find out what needs change and without compromising, change them.
And one reason companies fail to win big.
They refuse to change.
Got it. Love that. So when hiring, what is the one trait that is most important to you in a future leader, somebody who you're grooming to take over your job in future for you to evolve more?
Ability to listen and empathize.
Okay. Most leaders rule out some obstacles from their mind. Okay. Top athletes I've worked with, the word no is not a word in their dictionary. Is there a word that's not in Subrata's dictionary?
You've got me there. It'll sound funny, but I would say blind copy. BCC.
Got it. Love that.
Hate
That
that.
connects to a lot of character you talked about being absolute truth, and I really appreciate connecting the dots there. So now if Subrata in 2020 could go back in time and meet Subrata just graduating from high school in 1982, don't ask me why, what one advice will you give that young Subrata in 1982 getting ready for life ahead?
Yeah, this won't be right or wrong, but I would say chase your dreams, don't chase a job.
Brilliant. Chase the dream, not the job. And Subrata, this kind of a success over all these years cannot be random, which again means that there has to be a process. And I find that successful leaders all have processes. So what's the first thing, last thing on your work day? What you start, is there a ritual that you're comfortable sharing?
It's not so much urgent about the first thing in the morning, but there is something which I do religiously at the end of the day, and I've been doing it for a long time, which is I write down three things. Which is first I write down that what did I do today, which is going to hopefully change the future of the company or the direction of the company, or which was path breaking. And very often I have nothing to write and I feel sad. The second is I write down that what is it that would not have happened today if I would not have been there. This can be very mundane. Maybe I signed some documents, I signed something, I discussed something with someone. So the first one is to remind myself that I am here to serve the larger purpose of the future vision and strategy of the organization. The second is to remind me that I'm not here only for the strategy. I have to also on a day-to-day basis keep accomplishing something or doing something, which has to be much more than just signing a paper. And the third is most important. I write down that did I hurt anyone during the course of the day today through my action or through my pursuit of change or anything else? And I make it a point the next day to go back and speak to them.
So if you could step into my shoes, what is one question you would have asked Subrata Dutta that I did not ask?
I would put it totally different, Arjun. In fact, I would have liked to have been sitting here and asking Arjun Sen, the person I admire for his resilience, for his commitment, for his positive energy, that Arjun, what is your secret to winning big? Because you know everything, you know it, man. I mean, I have much more to learn from you than telling you about how to win big.
Okay.
Only humility, which I feel at this point of time, not physically, but virtually sitting in front of you.
Yes, so to me, Subrata, there are two things now that you asked, and I think only it's fair. So one of those is I always go back to a particular day in my life, which I think was very defining. It was September 1995, 32 years old, and my daughter was 2 years, 3 days old. When for the first time I got into, my doctors, found out about my laryngeal cancer and my, colorectal cancer, which is very rare to have. And I was trying to ask my doctors, like, I really want to know, like, is it serious or is it not? And when these doctors told me a very simple thing that Arjun is very serious, you may not see Christmas this year. And the first thing, Subrata, I don't know where it came from. It must be IIT or Patel Hall or somewhere. The words that came from my mouth is, if that is what it is, I am not paying your bills. And that day when I went to the car, I was not that upset about my cancer. I was more proud of who I am. And I could say that, like even after all these years. So I just feel that after that, every day in my life, the game has gone to overtime, which means that I already am ahead in life. So I just don't have to worry about positivity. I'm already ahead, and anything that comes to me is just like additional tips I should appreciate. And the second thing, I've also put in a very simple ritual when I wake up in the morning every day. There are 4 things I focus on. One is health today. What can I do for my health today? Because if I don't put the first hour there, time there, it doesn't work. It could be little exercise, planning for food, or thanking my doctors. Then I look at family today. So I really have appreciation for my wife. Sometimes she thinks it's crazy when I send her a text 5:30 in the morning. She just thinks I'm up to no good, which I always am. But I just want to appreciate. So to me, you don't want to ever miss that opportunity. Third is business tomorrow, because I really feel I'm really good at the fourth thing, which is business today. But before I do that, I want to invest. But to me, positivity is always looking at, in my humble opinion, life taking to overtime. Hopefully, I've answered your question to satisfaction, and I owe it to you because you took a lot of time to answer my questions.
It's awesome, Arjun. I really hope that you'll always stay the same awesome self that you are. And I know, God willing, you'll be here for many, many, many years more and delighting everyone around you.
Thank you. Thank you. At least we are happy we are here. So Subrata, this was absolutely amazing. So I want to first thank you for taking time today. I know in Hong Kong, it's really early. You woke up early on a weekend after a long week to do this. Truly appreciate that. Thank you.
And thank you, Arjun. It's been a privilege being with you.
So to me, this conversation with Subrata Dutta was very fascinating. Okay. Many a time leaders are about me, me, and I. I just did not hear that much about I. And one of the things I really think Subrata set the whole tone about the conversation, positivity at the very beginning, by quoting that challenge and opportunity are 2 sides of the same coin. Second, just when I fall into the trap of thinking I know everything about brand, Subrata just really tweaked it a little bit by saying, yeah, at the core, yes, Arjun, it's all about those cool, fun things, the brand story, the purpose, intent all together. But the brand means nothing if you don't have amazing people working in corporate and in the factories, all built together, hearts all aligned, towards the purpose. And then how do you deliver on the experience consistently? So to me, a brand is not what we tell, that's part of the job, but when the customer experiences the product and all the good karma, everything that goes there. The third thing that I started, really I enjoyed that part is many a time when we join a new job, we really think that post-interview, we have signed the contract, got the big bonus, blah, 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 everything, hallelujah. Now this is the time when honeymoon starts. No, what Subrata showed me was the first 30 days takes patience. You have this magical power to see and observe things that nobody does. And that's what I really think for Secrets to Win Big is seeing things what others do not see. And as Subrata said, that the first 30 days you have those power and boom, it vanishes. But also what he showed was have little patience, get to know the organization. So after that, you have your chance. 30 to 100 days, those 70 days are when you act. And finally, the big aha to me was, and this to me has been a first time unique, is to be in a category, you have to take pride for the category. But Subrata talked about that not only when I gave a Fab India example, it touched his heart and he was excited and appreciated that. He appreciates every retail every time, because I really feel that was a huge aha, was if you have to be in retail, you cannot fall in love with your company, Fab India or Samsonite alone. You have to fall in love with the whole category because that's what you live, that's what you breathe. And people who work for somebody else will work for you tomorrow. So you just cannot have partial love, you love the category. So Subrata, again, thank you for this incredible conversation. And I personally am taking a lot of nuggets. And everybody who are listening and will listen would love this. Again, all of you, thank you for listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. And today, it was truly a pleasure and happy listening. Thank you, Subrata. Thank you again.
Thank you once again, Arjun.
You've been listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, brand whisperer, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. To learn more, visit www.zenmango.com. Share this podcast with your friends and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.